The long-simmering conflict between Israel and Hezbollah has reignited, casting a shadow of fear and uncertainty across the region. Recent days have witnessed a dramatic surge in violence, marked by rocket attacks, airstrikes, and mounting casualties. The latest chapter in this decades-long struggle erupted swiftly, fueled by long-standing grievances and a volatile geopolitical landscape. As rockets light up the night sky and the drums of war beat louder, the international community watches with bated breath, hoping to avert a conflagration that could have devastating consequences. In a show of force, Hezbollah unleashed a barrage of rockets into northern Israel, targeting towns and cities that had long been symbols of peace and tranquility. The deafening roar of rockets tore through the night, shattering any illusion of normalcy. Over 100 projectiles rained down upon Israeli territory, some reaching as far as Haifa, a major port city. This unprecedented range demonstrated a disturbing increase in Hezbollah's military capabilities, sending shockwaves through Israeli society and raising fears of a wider conflict. Amidst the escalating violence, Hezbollah laid to rest one of its prominent commanders, Ibrahim Aqeel. The funeral procession, however, was a somber and subdued affair, a stark departure from the group's customary displays of strength and defiance. Instead of the usual throngs of mourners and fiery speeches, the ceremony was held in a closed-off intersection, shrouded in an atmosphere of secrecy and apprehension. The absence of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, who typically delivers televised addresses on such occasions, further fueled speculation about the group's internal state and the potential impact of Israeli airstrikes. As rockets and airstrikes become grim statistics, it is crucial to remember the human cost of this conflict. Behind the headlines and casualty figures lie stories of ordinary people whose lives have been upended by the violence. One such story is that of a 16-year-old Israeli girl who found herself caught in the crossfire. As rockets rained down upon her town, one struck her home, leaving her injured and traumatized. Her experience serves as a stark reminder that the true cost of war is measured not only in military objectives, but also in the shattered lives of innocent civilians. Section 5. A dangerous escalation, expanding battlefields and rising tensions. The current conflict marks a dangerous escalation in the long-standing feud between Israel and Hezbollah. This is not just another chapter in their tumultuous history. It represents a significant shift in the dynamics of their confrontation. Gone are the days of limited skirmishes confined to the border regions. What was once a series of sporadic clashes has now evolved into a full-scale conflict that threatens to engulf the entire region. Hezbollah's rockets now reach deeper into Israeli territory, striking population centers that were once considered beyond their reach. Cities that had previously been safe from the immediate threat of rocket fire are now on high alert, with civilians seeking shelter and the government scrambling to provide adequate defenses. This expansion of the battlefield has prompted a swift and forceful response from Israel, with its military carrying out intense airstrikes on suspected Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. The Israeli Defense Forces have mobilized their full arsenal, aiming to neutralize the threat and send a clear message of deterrence. The situation has reached a fever pitch, with both sides locked in a deadly game of tit-for-tat, fueling fears of a wider regional conflict. The international community watches with bated breath, concerned that this escalation could draw in neighboring countries and lead to an even more devastating war. Diplomatic efforts are underway, but the path to peace seems increasingly fraught with obstacles, as both Israel and Hezbollah show no signs of backing down. Section 6. Israel's leaders respond, vows of security and accusations of aggression. In the wake of Hezbollah's rocket attacks, Israeli leaders have responded with a mix of defiance and determination, vowing to protect their citizens and retaliate against those responsible for the violence. The attacks have left a trail of destruction, with homes and infrastructure damaged, and the civilian population living in fear. The Israeli government has emphasized its commitment to safeguarding its people, stating that any act of aggression will be met with a strong and decisive response. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, known for his hawkish stance, has pledged to unleash the full force of the Israeli military to ensure the safety and security of the nation. In a televised address, Netanyahu declared that Israel would not be intimidated by terrorist organizations, and that the military was prepared to take all necessary measures to neutralize the threat. He reassured the public that the government was working tirelessly to restore peace and stability, and that the nation's defense forces were on high alert. Meanwhile, President Isaac Herzog has accused Hezbollah of deliberately provoking the conflict, blaming the group for the recent escalation and its devastating consequences. Herzog condemned the attacks as a reckless and dangerous gamble that put countless lives at risk. He called on the international community to recognize the threat posed by Hezbollah and to support Israel in its efforts to defend itself. Herzog's statements have been echoed by other Israeli officials, who have warned that the situation could spiral out of control if not addressed promptly. As the situation deteriorates, the rhetoric from both sides has become increasingly heated, raising concerns about the potential for miscalculation and further escalation. Clashes along the border have intensified, with both Israeli and Hezbollah forces exchanging fire. Protests have erupted in both Israel and Lebanon, with demonstrators calling for an end to the violence. The Israeli military has ramped up its preparations, conducting drills and deploying additional troops to the border region. The international community watches with bated breath, hoping for a de-escalation, but fearing the worst. Section 7. Counting the cost casualties mount in Gaza and Lebanon. As the conflict rages on, the human toll continues to rise on both sides of the border. The relentless violence has left countless families in despair, with many forced to flee their homes in search of safety. The scenes of chaos and suffering are a stark reminder of the human cost of this ongoing conflict. In Gaza, where Israel has also conducted airstrikes against Palestinian militant groups, hospitals are struggling to cope with the influx of casualties. Medical staff are working around the clock, often with limited resources to treat the injured. The overcrowded emergency rooms and the sheer number of patients highlight the dire situation on the ground. The streets are filled with scenes of devastation, with homes reduced to rubble and families left grieving the loss of loved ones. The destruction is widespread, affecting not just buildings, but the very fabric of communities. The emotional and psychological toll on the residents is immeasurable as they navigate the ruins of their once vibrant neighborhoods. In Lebanon too, the violence has exacted a heavy price, with civilian casualties reported in areas targeted by Israeli airstrikes. The destruction of infrastructure has left many without access to basic necessities, further exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. The impact on daily life is profound, with schools, hospitals, and homes all bearing the scars of conflict. The mounting death toll serves as a grim reminder of the devastating consequences of this conflict and the urgent need for a peaceful resolution. The funerals of the deceased are somber events attended by grieving families and communities. Each loss is a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the urgent need for dialogue and reconciliation. The international community watches with bated breath, hoping for a cessation of hostilities and a path to lasting peace. Section 8. A region on edge calls for calm amidst ongoing violence. Despite international calls for restraint, the situation on the ground remains tense and volatile. Both Israel and Hezbollah have shown little appetite for de-escalation, with each side seemingly determined to inflict maximum damage on the other. The sound of explosions continues to echo across the region, a constant reminder of the fragility of the peace and the ever-present threat of further escalation. As long as both sides remain locked in this cycle of violence, the prospects for a lasting ceasefire appear bleak, leaving the region teetering on the brink of a wider conflict. Section 9. The world takes notice. International concern and diplomatic efforts. The international community has expressed deep concern over the escalating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, urging both sides to exercise restraint and seek a peaceful resolution. The United Nations, through its envoy to the region, has warned of the catastrophic consequences of a wider war, urging all parties to step back from the brink. Diplomatic efforts are underway to broker a ceasefire, with world leaders engaging in shuttle diplomacy to try and de-escalate the situation. However, these efforts face significant challenges, as deep mistrust and long-standing grievances continue to fuel the conflict. Section 10. Uncertain future, the path to de-escalation. As the dust settles on the latest round of violence, the path to de-escalation remains unclear. Both Israel and Hezbollah have dug in their heels, each side seemingly convinced that it can achieve its objectives through military force. The international community, while united in its calls for restraint, has yet to find a formula that can break the cycle of violence. The coming days and weeks will be critical in determining whether this latest flare-up can be contained, or whether it will spiral into a wider conflict with devastating consequences for the region and beyond.